in a complete mess. And I was anxious to stay drunk, self-isolate, constantly think about suicide. Things got worse. That child death. I'm crying in a church parking lot. For the first time, I thought about suicide. It got so bad by April, May of this year. It was horrible. Anytime I had a day off, I was drunk, holding my gun to my head. And it continued, and it got worse. And by 2019, I just couldn't stand it anymore. I felt like I was going to die. I'm thinking about suicide. I'm so miserable on the inside. Yet always smiling. We don't say we're hurting. We don't say we're weak. We don't say any of that stuff. Hi, my name is Lewis, and I'd like to tell you my story. All I would ask is that you listen with an open heart and an open mind, and this is for all my fellow law enforcement officers and first responders out there. I worked at a department that had about 2,000 people. And I guess I need to start at the beginning. Ever since I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a police officer. I would ride around on my bicycle and, pedal to all these different police departments in New Jersey and take pictures with my old camera, of the police cars, and then beg my parents to develop the film. And, that way I had a collection of photos of all these patrol cars, So I knew at an early age I wanted to be a law enforcement officer. At 17, like a dummy, I quit high school, joined the Navy at 17, and spent 7 years in the service. I was a hospital corpsman in the Navy, and I was assigned to the Marine Corps. I spent over 4 years assigned to the Marine Corps Infantry. It was just, a fabulous time. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the camaraderie. I enjoyed everything. But I knew that I needed to get out of the military because I wanted to follow through with my dream, which was to become a law enforcement officer. So after 7 years, I got out and became a deputy. And I worked 22 years at my agency. And the proudest day of my, career was that first day when I was sworn in and my mother pinned my badge on. Was just a fabulous day, good memories. Probably the next best day in my career was when I made homicide detective. I did a year in patrol, a year in property crimes, and then in my second year I was in homicide. Probably a little quick looking back, but it's what I wanted to do, and it's what, that was my dream. Homicide was a good job. A tough job, but a good job. I spent 5 years as a homicide detective, and in 2005 I was promoted to sergeant, and only spent a couple of minutes, it seemed like, back on the road, and was right back in there supervising a homicide squad for another 4 or 5 years. In 2009, I believe it was, I was promoted to lieutenant. 2013, to my shock, I never would have guessed in a million years, I was promoted to captain. I took over our Bureau of Special Investigations at that point. I was still in CID, dealing with murders and death investigations. And then in 2015, I was promoted to major and took over CID. So I had the best group of detectives, civilians, crime scene techs, you name it. I'll always be proud of the hard-working people in CID, always. I just had the best supervisors, the best detectives, the best civilians. I can't tell you what great people they were. So proud to have worked with them, to have known them. And then there was my bosses. My bosses were always good to me, always took care of me, always. Anything I needed, they were supportive, when it came to the job. Just anything I needed, I always got. From the outside, what a great career. And it was, in a way. I went to school, obtained my master's degree, went to the Southern Police Institute Administrative Officers course for 3 months. Went to the Senior Management Institute of Policing, run by the Police Executive Research Forum. Tons of schools and programs, and just education-wise, no issues, just fabulous. I noticed I started having issues and problems, and looking back now with a clear head, they started early on. And, I should have recognized what was going on, but I didn't. I didn't want to rock the boat or seem like I, was full of problems. I just wanted to do my job. I wanted to solve murders. I wanted to put, killers in jail. I wanted to, later on as I, moved up the ranks, I wanted to put sexual offenders and predators and molesters in jail, and those that abuse children and things like that. I was so proud of what I did, and I was so proud of the people I worked with. Just awesome people. Probably in about 2005, I noticed I was a homicide supervisor, and my sleep was just going down the tubes. I just could not sleep at night. And this continued on to just last month. So for well over, almost 2 decades, I just could not sleep. I would get 1 to 2, maybe 3 hours a night. I'd be up wandering around, looking out windows, smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee. I just, no matter what I did, I could not fall asleep. I went to the doctor, did sleep studies, tried every medication. On normal nights, I would take 5 to 6 Benadryl just to help me fall asleep, only to wake up an hour later. My mind was always racing and spinning. I always put the job first. Always put the job first over my family. In 2004, my father passed away. My kids came home one day from school and found him deceased of a heart attack. I had to have my own unit come out and investigate, the death in my house. It was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon when I got home, and, the kids were on the ground crying. My wife was on the ground crying, and, the job came first. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I was testifying in a homicide trial. I left my kids one time on the side of the road in their costumes to go to a shooting and had to call somebody to pick them up. They were crying. I ran out one Easter morning to a homicide case, knocking over Easter baskets, cursing and running out the door because there were problems with the case, problems I created, but, the list could go on. Thanksgivings, taking the turkey out of the oven, walking out onto the carport, taking a phone call, getting in the car, and not coming home for 2.5 days. The job always came first. Holiday season, I think it was 06, 07. Santa Claus didn't even come till like January 8th or 9th. My kids weren't that small. They knew something was up, but I was just too busy working murder cases and homicides and death investigations and things like that. I just always put the job first. That's what I thought this career was all about. That's what I thought I was supposed to do. And that's just the way things were. I always put the job first. As you can imagine, your law enforcement officers and first responders, we see the worst of people, just the absolute worst of humanity. Deputies murdered. We had one case where a deputy, very nice, good-hearted, just a good person, he was ambushed and, executed, he was shot in the head, contact wound, just, I've seen other deputies, with their cars smashed into a tree and they're smashed to pieces and dead, and just, you just see these things. I worked a cold case of a police officer for 9 years, my partner and I. It took 9 years to bring everybody to justice. This poor police officer was murdered, in just cold blood. And then the children, the children, you just think about all the dead children, It's not like TV where everything's a murder. I can't even count how many dead children I've seen in one lifetime. Drownings. Babies thrown in dumpsters. People just murdered in the worst possible way. It's not even like you roll out to the call and just you're there for 5 minutes and call for a crime scene and detectives to come, and then you go on to the next call. You're living, breathing, eating, sleeping these cases for, in some cases for years. I always prided myself that, a victim's family, I would talk for hours, days, whatever they needed to support a victim's family. Not just victims, suspects too. If a suspect was killed, their family didn't ask for that. Their family didn't deserve that. Talk to those people as well. My heart always just hurt for these people. Nobody deserves to suffer like that. Way too many deaths over the years. But I noticed in 2005 I was having some serious problems sleeping. That just continued on. And what did I do? I ignored it. I ignored it and just kept working, and then we used to joke, myself and several others, when you're so exhausted, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or I'll sleep in the next life. And that was just the running joke. I maintained that till probably 2017 when things started to come apart. By that time I was a major. I thought, things are good, but there's always that underlying tone. If you're a law enforcement officer, you'd understand this, or any first responder. As you get enough years in, as you move your way up the ranks, not even move your way up the ranks, it's all about, man, if I could just make it a couple more years, I'm going to collect my pension, I'm going to retire. That's all the conversations ever revolved around as I became older. And it's no way to live, but, that's was normal. That's what you expected. That's what you spoke about. When we had a deputy murdered, I supervised the homicide investigation, the death of the offender in that case. Everybody that was involved in the incident, critical incident, was told we had to go to the training center one day and talk to a psychiatrist. None of us went. We all said we did, but most of the people I worked with, including myself, we didn't go. I'm not going to tell some stranger my problems. No way. And you just internalize it and just shove it down there and ignore it. It's been a long road. So 2017, I really started to fall apart. I started having chest pain. I ignored it. I thought it was just the stress of the job. Things will be all right. Just work more cases, work harder. That was my mentality. 2018, in like a 1 week period, I had a stent put in, for a blockage. I had a gallbladder taken out. I was right back at work. I didn't take any time off. No FMLA. I just wanted to get back to work. But by then, I wasn't happy with work. I was so miserable. I could put on the greatest smile, hide things, joke, but I was just miserable. Miserable beyond belief. I didn't want to see any more death and destruction for one lifetime. My mind at night would constantly think about our cold cases. How can we solve them? What can we do to, bring resolution to the family? It was always about the families. My heart always broke for the families. Always. Still does. So by 2018, I went to a child death, and I just remember driving home, pulling in a church parking lot, and just sobbing and just didn't want to see any more death. And I would crack jokes with my bosses, the other command staff members. Hey, I'll take your spot in the patrol division, or I'll take over this, assignment or that assignment. But I never asked for help. I never actually sat down with, the three bosses above me, which was ultimately the third one was the sheriff. I never sat down with him and said, I'm hurting. I can't take it anymore. I want out of there. I was afraid. I was afraid they were going to look poorly upon me. I was afraid I'd be in trouble. I was afraid of all these things that are very important now that I look back. I should have just told them how I was feeling, but we have that mentality in law enforcement, and even in my agency, although I love my bosses to death, I love the people I work with, we don't say we're hurting. We don't say any of that stuff. It's just not done. By 2017, 2018, on my days off, just drunk on my days off. Started crying a lot. And that day I went to that child death. I'm crying in a church parking lot. For the first time, I thought about suicide. And I've never thought about suicide. And I was like, well, no way. And it just became worse and worse to the point I didn't want to go to any more deaths. I didn't want to deal with people's traumatic experiences, family members. I just didn't want to. My heart was so broken at that point. I was just so tired. You're talking 15 years almost without sleeping. The sleeping just got worse and worse and worse. So it's 2018. I'm drinking on my days off. I don't have a problem because I never go to work drunk. I never drank on a weeknight before work. I made sure was covered call out, made sure I was, off. No one was going to bother me. And then I would just drink myself into oblivion and just be crying and sobbing. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. It's like, what is my problem? I guess the best way to explain it would be self-destructive behavior. Really became self-destructive in my personal life. Hurt people I cared about, hurt a lot of people I cared about in my personal life. Felt guilt beyond guilt. And, I didn't take a part in raising my children. My wife did all the heavy lifting. She raised them. It was just easier to just go away and go to work. And it continued and it got worse. And by 2019, I just couldn't stand it anymore. I felt like I was going to die. I'm thinking about suicide. I'm so miserable on the inside, yet always smiling and, yes, sir, no, sir, I'll do it. I'll get it done. Volunteering for things, that type of mentality. I was a mess. I mean, a complete mess. And then the thoughts of suicide came more frequently, and especially when I was drinking. So I finally found another job. Beautiful job, great, just no stress, happiest place you could possibly, go work. And I left the agency. I took an early retirement and left, and shocked a lot of people. And I mean, even when I retired, they gave me a beautiful shadow box, just beautiful plaques and things. But things got worse. So we decided, let's sell the house and move close to the beach. That's where we always wanted to be anyway. Here's our opportunity. Sold the house, moved to the beach. Things got worse. I probably burnt roughly 25 plaques in a burn pit in my yard before I sold my house. Just threw them in a pit, burned them. I thought that would give me closure with, all the death, because they were all plaques from murder cases, cold cases, brutal homicides of children, just stuff we weren't meant to see in life. People shouldn't do these things to each other. I thought that would give me some kind of peace and closure. It didn't. Things got worse. So I retired. We moved to the beach on my days off with my new job. Would just stay drunk, self-isolate, constantly think about suicide. It got so bad by April, May of this year. It was horrible. Anytime I had a day off, I was drunk, holding my gun to my head. I just wanted to sleep. I was cursing at God, why am I in this position? What did I do? Feeling sorry for myself. I'd close my eyes at night and I couldn't get away from everything. And I just didn't want to, even retired, I didn't want to admit that I needed help. I was afraid. It came to a head in May of this year when, I went out to a bar, drank as much as I could possibly drink, came home, started drinking hard liquor, got my gun, was holding it to my head, was cursing at God, just saying, please, let me just pull the trigger and end this. I'm tired of suffering. Then I called my mother, who's already lost 2 sons, and I start telling her at midnight that I'm going to kill myself. Who does that? How down in the dumps can you be to be that way? My wife had no idea what I was going through. She felt horrible for me, but at the same time, I was destroying our relationship. If you ask her, it was always walking on eggshells around me. No domestic violence, but just miserable, blowing up at things, yelling, screaming. I woke up the next day, called my mother, apologized, said I wanted help. So, through someone she knew, I was put in touch with the Resiliency Project. And the first person I had to FaceTime with, and that was my first thing, FaceTime. I don't want to FaceTime with anyone, I'm still hungover. But I met Nick, and I FaceTimed with him, and one of the things that stuck in my head was, get up, get out of the house, walk. And I'm thinking, walk? Here we go, who's this guy? Well, what is walking gonna do? But it helped. Then I started walking with my granddaughter every day. It really helped. Every day I walk with her. So that same day, the next person I believe I called was Gina Marie. Told her this is how I was feeling, everything I'm telling you now. I think one of the things she told me was, you got to quit drinking. I did. Things got a little better. And then talked to Kip, who, just an awesome guy. Very easy to relate to. He came from corrections. I was in law enforcement. Listen to what he said. Things got a little better. Then there was Megan, who helped me with meditation and sleeping. I've tried everything to sleep for years. I look at pictures of myself now. You can just see the exhaustion in my eyes. I never noticed that before. Just exhaustion. So I listened to her, and you never imagine. I'm starting to sleep again. I can actually put my head down at night, and my mind isn't cluttered with every death, every just human misery crap you see on this job. Started to sleep, started to pray, started to walk every day. Looked at quit drinking. They hooked me up with a therapist locally that deals with first responders. I was so broke at that point I couldn't argue. You want me to walk? Okay, I'll walk. If you asked me to eat dog shit off the ground at that point, I would have done it. Anything to just feel better. I just was broken and wanted to feel better. I wanted peace. Well, let me tell you something. Nobody's asked me to make this video. I feel in my heart I want to share this story. I don't care who knows anymore. The truth is the truth. I was so self-destructive and so miserable and wanted help so bad that just When I spoke with everybody at the Resiliency Project, it was just like a weight, just lifted off your shoulders. I have a long way to go, but like I said earlier, May of this year was the worst month of my life. I'm holding a gun to my head, drunk, calling my mother, who's lost 2 of her children already, to say I'm gonna kill myself. Can't get any worse. Having said that, the month of June and so far in July have been damn near the best month or month and a half of my life. I'm looking at things a different way. The world's not so bad. I don't know that I'll ever put those memories away and just never think of them again. But I'm learning how to cope with them. I'm learning how to deal with things. In 5 weeks, I probably went 2 years thinking about suicide almost every day. I haven't thought once about suicide in 5 weeks. Oh my goodness, that's a horrible thing. I pray every day. I walk every day. There is a life. I guess my whole purpose of this story was to tell you that you're not alone. Don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel ashamed. There's so many good cops and first responders out there. There's a few bad apples. We all see it in the media. Get help. If you're afraid of your department knowing, like I was, although they were the best bosses and people in the world, I didn't want to admit that I was weak or couldn't handle things. Resiliency Project or anybody you reach out to, they're not going to tell your department. They're not going to tell your agency. Don't wait till you're to that point where you're holding a gun against your head. Don't do it. Life goes on. Life will be okay. Just get help. As I had that passion in my life to solve murder cases, that's all I wanted to do was solve murders and help families that lost loved ones. The folks at the Resiliency Project, they have that same passion about helping people. That's their calling in life. That's what they want to do. If you look at this video and you're a cop and you're feeling the way I did, you don't have to. I didn't realize that all these years. You don't have to. Ask for help. Reach out for help. Call the Resiliency Project. Talk to Nick. Talk to Gina Marie. Talk to Megan. Talk to Kip. Reach out for help. They'll help you. There's so many groups out there that'll help. I mean, just what a great organization. I can't speak highly enough about them. It sounds kind of silly, but it's the God's honest truth. They saved my life. I wouldn't be here 5 weeks later. Sooner or later, I would have got drunk enough, depressed enough to kill myself. And that's never been me. So slowly but surely, I'm seeing the old, happier self, the old me come back. This is not your fault. This wasn't my fault. Yeah, I did crappy things, but it's not your fault. The things you see and do in your career, you just want to help people. You want to do the right thing. It's not your fault. So anyway, thank you for listening to my story. I truly appreciate it. God bless you. The first responders we have there do such a hard job. Just take care of yourselves. And I hope, somebody will watch this video and think, wow, if that guy can do it, I can do it. Let me get some help. So, anyway, really appreciate everybody listening to my story. Thank you.